Balance isn't just for squirrels. This is a vital part of our well-being that often we can take for granted in our youth and bemoan its loss as we get older. But like any other skill in life, it needs upkeep. Today I'm going to share with you what I call woods balancing. This is basically just balancing out in the woods. It's a little bit different than learning traditional balance skills like slacklining. In particular, we need to learn how to balance on very unpredictable surfaces. Even adding just a little bit more balance to your life opens up doors of adventure and exploration because, well, we can go places that we otherwise couldn't go before. The approach I'm going to share today also has the side benefit of giving you a kind of balance that will last you into your elder years and help prevent things like falls. In the forest, the only thing that you can guarantee about the surfaces that you're going to be walking and balancing on is that they're going to be unpredictable. Let's start with some basics on a log. A log close to the ground allows you to practice without hurting yourself if you fall. So balance is a complex system. It's composed of visual stimuli, our inner ear, and our proprioceptive sense, all working together. Don't worry if that seems complicated. All these systems work together seamlessly to keep us balanced. Here I'm just standing. When I balance, I want to feel my feet, toes, and ankles all working to serve as a stable base. I start with my arms out to give me a balance aid, and I'm loose in my hips. Like in any effective movement, I want to think of my center in my midsection, just below my navel. By default, you might find yourself thinking high and balancing from the top. This is very unstable because I overcompensate and throw myself side to side. We can move our upper body, but that movement should originate in our midsection. Our feet attached to the log, our hips wiggle to correct our balance, and our upper body counterbalances the hip wiggle. Again, it sounds complicated, but if you concentrate on your feet and imagine your center is your midsection, you'll naturally start to sink your weight instead of balancing from the top of your body. Speaking of keeping your weight low, that is one of the biggest tricks when it comes to woods balancing. Our default, strangely enough, is that when we lose our balance, if I'm losing my balance this way, I tend to throw my upper body that way. What we're trying to do is what I'm talking about. We're just not doing it in a super efficient way. Because when we throw our upper body this way, it tends to throw our hips that way and counterbalance us. That's the default idea. But when we do this from a high place, a high center of gravity or mental center of gravity, then again, we don't throw those weights very effectively and we usually end up toppling. So instead, what I'm going to do is sink my weight when I lose my balance, drawing my hips down toward my feet. When I do this, I will lower my weight and capture my balance more effectively than if I throw the top of my body one direction or another. Once you feel like you can balance just standing there, then walk along the log. Start with your arms out and your gaze forward. It is definitely okay to glance down, see where you're going to put your feet if you need to. And it's really important to be in your peripheral vision. Pretty soon, we're going to start trying to look around as we walk. And that's going to really mess us up unless we are in our peripheral vision. And wide angle vision would be another way to say it. If you don't know how to do this, I will link to a video in the description where I talk about that wide angle vision in more detail. I'm going to expound on this vision part a little bit because it's pretty important. In the woods, we want to be aware of our environment. It's so much different than in a gym where we have a predictable environment that we're dealing with. We also might be dealing with all kinds of different visual elements. It could be foggy, it could be dark, it could be very bright because we're walking into the sun. We can blend and flow with all these elements if we learn to look around as we walk. So now just try balancing while you look around yourself. Remember to stay in wide angle vision. If you're already good at wide angle vision, you're going to know what I'm talking about here. If not, when we're in wide angle vision, we can look in one direction, look in another, but our visual center isn't carried along in the same way as it is when we're stuck in narrow focus or foveal vision. There, when we look, it tends to throw our balance. But here, if we're in wide angle vision, we'll feel like we are looking down at the log in front of us, even when we're looking off to the left or the right. If we were learning slacklining, we'd be told to keep our vision really nice and straight and not down on the ground. We're doing this in the same way, using the wide angle vision, except we're moving our vision around, but keeping it soft, keeping it light, so that we feel centered in our vision, even when we're looking around us and taking in our whole environment visually. If you can do that, now it's time to get rid of those outstretched hands. Bring your hands in, fold them up, put them against your chest, whatever you need to do to become aware of them and to stop using them as a tool. Remember, with woods balancing, we're talking about a practical skill. You might be going up in a tree to get something that's up there, and then you're going to be carrying it on the way back. And it can be tough to carry something and keep your arms stretched out for balance at the same time. You can do that, then you're ready to progress to this new default way of walking on a log. Put your arms down at your sides. They're ready to balance you if necessary, but you're not depending on them in the same way. They're just ready to interact with your environment. Gaze around yourself with your wide angle vision enabled, and keep your weight low. If you start to lose your balance, shift back down through your hips into your feet. Once you've got this on a nice stable log on the ground, you're ready to move to, well, recognizing that in the woods, we basically are going to have two kinds of balance that we need to develop. One is our static balance. This is what I talk about when I'm talking about a surface that is really stable, like that log. But we'll also have to use dynamic balance, because there are times when a log is going to shift or break, or it's just going to be thin enough that it's wiggly. And we have to be able to move and shift with whatever we're walking on. For whatever reason, maybe this is just me, but I've found that if I really practice what I call my static balance, I get, I'm not so good at the wiggly balance. If I really practice that wiggly balance, I get not so good at the static balance. I need to practice both at once and make sure that I'm constantly refining both of these skills, almost thinking of them as separate skills. To practice your wiggly, well, you need to be a little bit careful here. Here I'm setting up a log that is curved and kind of thin, so it bends and moves with my weight. Obviously, start lower probably. A good way to start is on a log, if you can find that it's just going to shift a little bit back and forth as you walk. But if you really want to take that wiggly balance to a new level, make yourself I call this a slack line, but it's not a slack line. A traditional slack line is made of a webbing, so a flat piece of material that is stretchy. And that stretchiness, it's super cool and fun for slacklining. You can do all kinds of cool stuff. However, if you fall off of it, it tends to whip you to the ground in a strange way and can whip up between your legs and do some other rather unpleasant things. Here, I'm just using a rope, what we'd call, in climbing or a static rope. And so not confusing that with static balance, but a rope that doesn't stretch. And that's going to give me something that wiggles, but it's not going to have that stretch that whips back and smacks you and punishes you when you mess up. I'm not going to do a tutorial on this slacklining here. That is a completely different, it'd take a whole video to do. If you practice this and you get so that you can stand up here, walk around a little bit, you're going to find that your wiggly balance gets really good really fast. Now I'm going to end this with taking this to the next level. Here I am standing back on that original log and I'm closing my eyes. Check me out here. I'm falling off again and again and again. I used to actually be pretty good at this because I practiced it a lot. I have not practiced it for some years, and I just tried it, closed my eyes, and found myself toppling off. What happens if I have to balance in low light conditions or even in, dark? Yeah, I'm kind of screwed. This is because vision is one of the primary tools that we use to balance, but we can learn to balance without it. Practicing your balance without your vision, it will add tons to your balance practice. This is 2 days later. I practiced a little bit, and to me, this shows how quickly we can regain a skill if we have learned it previously. So not making up the difference here. You can see this is way, way easier for me. And to me, that's very heartening because it means if we develop skill sets, those skill sets, even if we don't maintain them constantly, they stay within us at some level and become easier to acquire at a later date, should we choose to reinstate that skill set. Thanks for joining me today, friends. Always so wonderful to be with you. Can't wait to talk with you in the comments. Leave any methods that you use for developing balance down there. We can all learn and grow from each other. All right, we'll talk with you in the comments.